When I founded Forge Wealth Management, I created a firm that aims to put our clients' interests first. Our clients are our priority. We create customized financial plans tailored to your needs and deliver them in a clear and concise manner. We are committed to our relationship with you and want to be part of your life journey. Welcome to Forge Wealth Management. We look forward to meeting you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Marcia O'Connor, CEO and founder of Shadow Her. And Shadow Her, for those who don't know, is a nonprofit helping women entrepreneurs and their operations. It's a 6-month course that we go through to teach them basics about operations and sales and marketing and strategy and finance. So if you know of an entrepreneur out there, let us know. And with that, ironically, it's amazing of our Shadow Her cohorts out there that already have basically graduated because on a plane, nonetheless, or meeting other people in the stations and all, you find people that you're like really excited about. So one of our people, Lindsay, actually had met Karen and referred her to us saying she should definitely be on our Shadow Her podcast. So today we are so excited to have Karen Laos, basically, and she is the CEO and founder of Karen Laos Consulting, and a lot more background behind all that has the best view ever in her picture right now because she's on the West Coast today. So thanks for getting up early for us. Karen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yes, happy to get up early for this.
Oh my God, I love it. Well, I would get up early every day when I saw a beautiful blue sky and water in my backyard as well. So, which is really nice to see that. Karen, how did you and Lindsay meet?
We met through the Empowering Women in Industry conference or organization, and she won a session with me, actually, and then she decided to coach with me. So that's how it worked out. Yeah,
that's so
and
great.
we continue to stay connected and connect each other to different people in our network, and it has been such a joy to know her. She is amazing.
She is amazing, and she's doing some great things out there. We were lucky to have her part of our first cohort, and she has a great mentor, Ginny. So it's just, she was definitely, all the right pieces were fitting for her. And then she reached out and said, hey, I have some great people to talk to on the Shadow Her podcast, and here we are. So it's exciting. You've got a great, impressive background. You actually you went to school in our neck of the woods in Pennsylvania out here, which is pretty cool. Lafayette is an awesome place. My godson went there too. And, did you ever think back then that you'd be doing today what you're doing today?
Yes and no, for sure. I knew I didn't, I have a major in psychology, and I knew that I never wanted to be a therapist. I was very clear about that. But I always wanted to be the Oprah of San Francisco.
Wow.
And while I am not Oprah, obviously, it is something that I will say I never thought I would write a book, have a podcast, those kinds of things. And certainly I never thought I'd be on a mission to eradicate self-doubt in 10 million women in 10 years.
Wow. Yeah. How's that going?
One day at a time.
Yeah.
I will say that is what gets me up every day, for sure.
I bet. Well, Women in Self-Doubt, that's an interesting project. So tell me more about your consulting business, how you got started, why you got started, and what do you do today with it?
Well, I'll start with the why I got started. I have a background in HR, and specifically the last really 14 years before I started my business in 2020 was all about helping people communicate to influence through their executive presence as well as their messaging and storytelling. Mm-hmm. And what I found is that, I can coach anybody to be a good public speaker or to come across well. There's something about putting somebody on a camera and then watching it back that's motivating to change a few things. But I will say that the thing that I really wish that we could have dove into more is the internal dialogue that we have. And that's a big part of why I started it. In addition to that, kind of adjacent to that, was me stuck in a boardroom tongue-tied. I say stuck meaning I was stuck that I could not get the words out. My stomach was in my throat. My boss had to shut down the meeting. And it was in front of my peers. And this was even when I was traveling all over the world, speaking on big stages. And yet there was something about a couple of people in that room, and in particular my boss, and she so kindly shut down the meeting, but I was mortified. And she took me aside and she said, Karen, you didn't trust your gut.
Mm.
She goes, you could have just tabled the meeting. And two things happened there. Number one, I had an internal conflict with what she had asked me to present, but I never said anything because I was taught as a kid, you don't question your boss. And then the second part of this moment was that was really the moment that I set out to figure out what was at the root of that. And that's really where my heart is, that woman that's sitting in a boardroom or a conference room wanting to speak up, but paralyzed by self-doubt. And that's when I realized I did lots of therapy, lots of personal growth work, anything possible that I could to figure it out. And it turns out that she was actually the archetype of my dad. And that's why I was so intimidated by her.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
interesting.
that's really one of the biggest things that has like that drives me to where, and the way when I look at it, when I say eradicate self-doubt, what I mean by that, my definition, because I think that's important to say,
Mm-hmm.
is that no woman is paralyzed by doubt to the point where she is not expressing the truest version of herself. She's not sitting there making herself smaller and shrinking back and holding back, but that she's actually equipped with the confident communication skills to move forward. And that's what I love to help women with, whether it's negotiating a raise or speaking up literally in the boardroom, presenting with confidence on a virtual screen or in person, but anything around those confident communication skills so that that confidence comes by being equipped with those skills.
Wow. That is a long way to come to see where you're at today, which is really cool to see all of your own self-help help you
Yeah.
basically, push you off to where you're at today, which is awesome,
Yeah.
utilizing all that. Now, when you got started though, what was that one thing that said, I'm ready. I'm ready to turn this over and do this. I'm sure something said, or somebody said to you, hey, how about doing this on your own? I mean, what was that one thing that said, I can do this myself?
The most recent time, because I have left corporate twice, once was in 2003, and then the second time in 2020. It was
Mm.
actually a very specific moment. It was September of 2019 when I signed up for Jess Ekstrom's Mic Drop Workshop. And Jess is a woman who helps more women speakers get on stages.
Oh, wow.
And I was working full time at that moment. And the 2 years prior to me leaving, I was feeling pretty stuck at my job. It was a wonderful job, but I was really feeling this itch of, oh, I want to get back out there as an entrepreneur. And I would say that this time is when I had to ask myself, and I've always been a little bit obsessed, I shouldn't say obviously, but wanted to call that out with personal growth, like ever since I was a kid. And so always reflecting and being intentional about the choices that I'm making. I never wanted to be that person that 5 or 10 years later at a job thought, what have I been doing the last 10 years?
Yep.
And it was that moment where I thought, you know what? Why do I keep putting off this dream of speaking? But I was speaking for this company, but I thought, why do I keep putting this off? I talk so much to people and say, oh, I'm a coach or I'm a trainer, but I rarely say I'm a keynote speaker.
Mm.
And that decision around declaring the dream, which was already reality in action, but it wasn't on my own. And that was the declaration where I said, okay, I'm going to sign up for this. And and I waited. I was in a Nashville hotel room. I had just flown in. It was one of those, sign up by midnight. You know how they do all that.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was 5 to 12. And I'm sitting there going, do I want to invest in this? Because it was a lot of money for me at the time.
Yep.
And I did. And that's really what put that stake in the ground. And then I created a formula out of it called 3Ds, where you declare. And that really means that, or excuse me, you decide first, you declare that you're doing something by telling everybody, and then you do it. So that has been kind of a fun formula that came out of that.
Oh, yeah. That's a great formula. I always tell people too, when you declare, you're sort of like bounded by it because now people are going to ask you about it. And so you sort of have to do it,
Yes.
kind of a thing. So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty crazy. But you have to. It's like writing something down. Like, writing for years, people were like, did you write your business plan down? I was like, I'm getting to it. Like, write it down and it will happen. And lo and behold, it sure did, which is pretty cool. So when you started and you had started getting clients and all, how was that like? Because I have a lot of entrepreneurs on here who have started or have tried to start, and you're in the world of people. You're selling people business services. How did you go about starting to do that and knowing what you're going to sell and knowing what you're going to charge?
Oh, well, that I think is always a journey. I don't know
Yep,
if it ever really ends. I
I
hate to
agree
say
with
that
that. Hmm.
yeah, if that's, I don't want to be discouraging, but I think it's important to be realistic. And I think for me, I'm always growing. So the first, I would say, having mentors, people that
Yep.
had done it before, testing out the market and failing fast, trying things and going, okay, that didn't work. Wow, and then also getting emotionally attached to something where I know this could help so many people, but either people they might not want it, or you have a marketing problem. And so I feel like I'm constantly testing things out to this day.
Yeah.
But I would say that a big part of it was mentors, business coaches, and then people that had gone before me that I knew were doing things. And the other thing that I've found that still strikes me is that very few, in particular women, talk about pricing. I
Mm.
am very open about my pricing. It's like, here's what I did. And I feel like people are so relieved almost because they go, nobody talks about this. And it's funny how a lot of times people even shy away from sharing prices even when you're in a conversation. And so I think that's another big thing that I would say that I had to overcome is owning it. I mean, I remember years back when I remember my husband overheard me in a virtual conversation talking about price or something where I said something to a potential client like, well, what could you pay? And I remember him coming into the room just saying, and he hardly ever said anything about my conversations. He's the most non-judgmental person you could ever imagine. And he said, why do you ask them what they could pay? He says, you've got to just declare your prices. And granted, there was more to the conversation
Yep.
because I do think that it's important at times to ask, what is your budget? Because I think
Yep.
that's an important question. But his point was that I was being loosey goosey. I was
Hmm.
waffling because I didn't feel my own worth
Yep.
enough. Yeah.
It's true. I think that's the hardest part when you start because you don't think people are going to pay that much for you. And did I overcharge it? Did I blow it? And so it's a really fine line when you first start out. And I actually had one of my clients tell me that I undercharged them. And she was in charge of procurement. And she said, why don't you go back and add like X amount to your hourly rate and get it back to me? And I sat there like, really? And she said, absolutely. I do this for a living. She goes, you're so underselling yourself. I see what you do. Like, you're better than that. And I said, okay. And so I did, but it was a life learning lesson, and
Wow.
thank God I had like guardian angels out there watching over me and always looking out for me to
Yes.
say, hey, do more, and charge more. And now it's funny, we're probably a little bit higher charged out there, but so worth it, I think, because the people that we provide. But now I don't even bat an eye. I'm like, no, that's the rate. And people, like, if they want good service, they're paying it and they don't have a problem with it. But it takes a while for us, the individual, to get over that hump of knowing that you're worth it.
Well, I agree. I remember vividly standing at a loading dock on this call, got an unexpected call around with a potential client. I didn't, it
Mhm.
was one of those she just called me out of the blue, and
Yep.
rarely people do that anymore. But what was so memorable about it is that this is now what I teach people because I don't know how this just came out of my mouth at this time, but she was asking me, well, what is your rate? And then I just said it was for coaching a corporate CFO. And I mentioned it, and she just, it was that dramatic pause where she was taking it in. And so I waited a couple seconds, and then I asked her, "Well, how does that land for you?" And she said, "Wow, you're quite expensive compared to the others we've been looking at." And what came out of my mouth was, I recognize that I'm higher than most. And
Yep.
it felt so good to own that. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to suggest people say that when it's appropriate.
It's amazing. And I always tell entrepreneurs out there, don't be swayed by that silence. You're waiting to hear and you're waiting for that. It's really awkward silence to hear afterwards. So there's nothing there, but don't be that first one to speak. Have them speak first, as long as it might take. It could be like even 10 minutes, but you basically stand firm of that and then hold back too, because you can't do that. And you can't, I learned this so many times too. I've heard people, like we're in sales, and I'll bring people with me just to test the waters with them and all. And I always love when they're on the rocking seat and they're talking about their prices like this, or they do I always hear that with women in particular, their hair curl like this. Then I realize they're doing it. And you're like, oh, like they got us because they know we're nervous. You know what I mean? And I'm always more advocate for the female entrepreneur too, because I sometimes think it's like, I feel not always, but sometimes a male CEO wants to do one up on us. And, not all the time, but there are times. And I stand firm. I look them in the eye. I'm not going to quake. I'm not going to quiver. I'm like, bring it on. And then it's interesting too, because they want to lowball. And I'm like, no. And I'm like, you can look around. Matter of fact, you should take them. Really, you really should. And then 6 months later, like, we got to do work again. I said, guess what? The price went up, and so you gotta like be control of it. But it is hard. I'm in my mid 50s. We graduated the same time in college, so we're similar there. And it's interesting because I'm at that point where I just, like, I don't care what your face expression is. This is the price,
Yeah.
But it is interesting where when you're younger and just starting out, it's hard. It's an interesting skill to take for sure.
Absolutely. And the challenge that I think a lot of us face, certainly I did as well, is if I declare my prices and they say no, and I need clients, then, how do you navigate that? So part of it is being able to be okay with saying no. And the other thing that I've learned probably the most, which I already touched on, is the waffling. That when we start wavering or waffling, then that can be confusing. I mean, I even remember at one point many years back where somebody said, because I always had a coaching business on the side in addition to being in the corporate world. But I remember somebody telling me something like, this feels like she didn't say the price is right, but it was something that I will never forget, because it was something like, I feel like we're on that game show. Well, and what price do you want? And I was so embarrassed. So I thought, I never want to do that again.
It's so funny, all the times we learn of our lessons and all too. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to go to a quick break to say thanks to one of our sponsors out here today. But team, I hope you're getting a lot of this and taking a lot of notes. There's a lot of really good golden nuggets here today. So we'll be right back. This is Marcia O'Connor, host of Shadow Her podcast, and we'll be right back.
Ready to redefine your talent strategy? Let's make Redefine the word of the year for your success. Introducing RAS, Recruitment as a Service. Outsource your talent strategy with the O'Connor Group. Our 4-tiered approach was crafted to align with your business, whether you're launching a startup or leading a thriving corporation. Our cost-effective solutions are designed to elevate your business and enhance your people strategy, ensuring scalability and strategic growth. Redefine your recruitment strategy with RAS.
And welcome back, everybody. We're back from our little intermittent break there, and obviously having a great time interviewing Karen Laos, who owns her own consulting business, got started basically, did a lot of HR, worked in the corporate world, went on her own, and we were just talking about, the pricing and how you stick to your guns and don't worry about the silence in between, and really figure out and own that really well. But I wanted to go into more about your consulting, because I know that wellness and health is a big piece of what's happening out there. When people are utilizing your services right now, what would you say like the top 2 reasons why people are calling you, Karen?
Number one, it's second guessing themselves and wanting to stop that. It's the doubt, it's the holding back, feeling like something is off and I need to change something. And related to that, it's all connected, is public speaking. So really being able to present better at meetings and to have that confidence could be those I would say almost are together, but the self-doubt definitely tends to be at the core of whatever somebody is reaching out to me for. The other one is negotiating, asking for what you want, and really being comfortable with that and navigating all the different things that come out of that. So it might be an entrepreneur who's trying to price themselves very similar to what we've been talking about and feels that lack of confidence. And so a huge part of what I help women with is the sentence prompts. And a lot of what I do is on video as well as role play. And that bringing people to the almost real life scenario. What I love about that is that the subconscious mind doesn't know what's the difference between what's real and what's not. And so the role plays in particular, and then watching it back on video is super powerful to be able to go, okay, that's really going to move the needle.
Yeah.
And when people have the prompts, then they're much more confident. And that's years ago, I remember one of my first clients said, that's what gave me the confidence, Karen, knowing what to say and how to say it. So really looking at what are some, not a script, but what are some sentence prompts to help me and how to respond, and being equipped with those along with how am I coming across, like you were talking before, with the twirling of hair or these habits that we don't even realize that we're doing. So how is our executive presence?
Yeah, I find that to become even more important nowadays than ever because it's so easy to be just so casual out there and to not really, speak your mind, but do it in a way where it's being heard, not being, that B word. But it is interesting where it's a fine line for people to do that. I do find women find it a little bit harder to do. So I can see you're probably extremely busy with a lot of work coming in because I do think a lot of people have a hard time doing that. And it's a shame because I can't tell you in my world, I will go into so many meetings. I'm the only female CEO. And it is interesting because I'm not a shy flower. I used to be. And long time ago, I was very shy, actually. I know people out there are like, no way, Marcia, but yes, it's true. And ironically enough, I tell people all the time, like, believe in what you have. And if you're honest and you believe in what you say, people will buy trust. And I think that's the biggest key for an entrepreneur is like if you believe in what you do, people will buy that. The biggest thing is, that's why I did Shadow Her, is really figure out the operations and make sure there's a system in play so that when you get a sale in, how does it get processed and how does it execute? And then how do you get an invoice? And then how does it get paid and making sure all that is taken care of? And that's all around operations. And I think that's where a lot of females are a little bit they shy away from. They're like, oh, I'll get to that. I'm like, no, that system should be really, the smoother that is, the more business you're going to get because it'll just come because of how easy the process was, which is where we come along. But it is interesting out there. What do you say in regards to, I would say, women entrepreneurs out there? What would be the best two pieces of advice you'd have for them right now in the given situation out there in the world?
Number one, it's exactly what you said. Get your systems lined up because that is something that I was pretty typical. Like, oh, I'll figure that out later. And then you're scrambling to go, oh my gosh, okay, how should we do this? And what's great when you are slower and you're starting out is that you can test out different systems and determine, because I feel like I've tested out a varies amount of them to go, okay, this is the thing that works. So that's one of the things that I would say on a very tactical level. And then secondly, but equally important, so I would say they're equal, is to really have those people in your life, have a support system. Make sure you have your tribe around you because it is so hard. I call entrepreneurship the 3 E's. It's the most exhausting thing I've ever done, the most exhilarating thing I've ever done, and the most emotional, I would say, too.
Touche.
Those 3 components are always there. And if we don't have that support, that it makes it really hard to keep going on the days that are discouraging.
Oh my gosh, there are days you get up and just be like, okay, you got this because 5 o'clock's going to be here today and you got this and no problem. Because it's like, it's just stuff I don't really want to do today, but I know I got to do it, And then there are days I'm like, yeah, it's like fun day. And you're out there, but you're exhausted by the time you come home. I become really good and I'm doing crock pot luncheons. We have a crock pot text at work because I realize at home, by the time I get home, I want to get my walk in. And then I was like prepping meals. I like being like, a mom. And I'm making homemade food. And I was realizing, like, okay, it's like an hour. I get my walk in. It's getting dark earlier. I'm like, forget it. We're going to do crock pots from now on. And so every morning I get up super early to make the crock pot lunch. I'm like, okay, time to come home. It's going to be all done. And I can get my walking in. But it is interesting how you have to start thinking and take care of yourself. But the tribe is important. I'm also a member of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. I don't know if you have gone to that road yet, Karen, but they have a huge chapter in California, and a few of them actually. But it's been my tribe, and I have a women's chat. We talk every month for about 3 hours where there's 5 of us, and we talk about one good thing, one bad thing. But we also talk on a text chat constantly, like, hey, this happened. Hey, who has a lead? Who has this? It's been real. And one just sold her business and she's starting a new initiative. And so she's excited about that. So we're helping her through all that because it's a journey. It's a very emotional journey too when you sell your business. And so it's really helping her to her next level and what she's doing with that. And so it's so cool, but you're so right about that. Now, where do you who do you hang out with? Because obviously I have a team of 55 people. I know if people have solo entrepreneurs, they might have under 5 people, which is still business and still amazing. Who do you hang out with?
I've got an amazing network, and I will say, honestly, it's almost a little bit too much lately because I'm trying to focus myself. But I've got some great women in particular that have helped me, and I've got multiple groups. One is a mastermind of Christian business women. I've also got a group that I organize. I've got a few different groups that I organized.
Nice.
The Townsend Leadership Program is another group that I'm in, and we meet monthly.
Nice.
And that is in person. So I love that. And to your point about having the text chain and Voxer, I use that a lot with my clients as well as with the groups that I'm in, the voice memo app. And it is so wonderful to be able to have people to bounce ideas off. And I've just found that to be invaluable. Like, hey, what do you think about this? And then I've also got a peer group mastermind that we brought together after being in a coaching group together that we paid for. And it's awesome. And so I'd say too, find those people and then I'd say also the thing, this may go without saying, but find people that you can be totally real with.
Yep.
And that's the thing. I go back to pricing. I think a lot of times people are so shy to talk about pricing because everybody judges themselves of, am I charging too little? Am I charging too much? And all the things. And just being able to go, this is not a comparison game. It is truly not a comparison game, but it is so hard. I'm reading this book called The Courage to be Disliked right now.
Ooh.
And it is so powerful. So powerful.
It's so funny. I always go into that at the very end too. I'm always like, so what books are you reading? So you beat me to it, which is really cool. Now, do you do an actually hardcover or do you do like a Kindle or Audible?
I like the paper.
Yep.
Sometimes I'll do, frankly, I like them all because I do Audible sometimes for the car and that kind of thing. But there is something to me about actually touching the page.
Yes.
That's that old fashioned perhaps, but I do enough on my screen as far as the Kindle or iPad version. So I really like that hard copy. Yeah.
I came in the office and there was a big FedEx box out there because we were in Atlanta last week and there was a gifting suite for people all the entrepreneurs who've written books. And I was like, yes. I was that kid, like loved pulling out books from the library and everything. And I don't know when I'm going to get to read all of them, but I have, I think, like 20 books we brought back. And I just love it because I love even starting, like I have started like 5, 6, 7 books at one time. And I do that. I do Kindle and I do Audible. I'm just not a normal person, but it's just so cool. I love learning so much, but it's really cool to put it in play. If you learn that one little, golden nugget, it was so worth it. So it's pretty funny. But I like the books too. I like using a highlighter and highlighting stuff. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes,
I
yes,
love
I
doing that.
know. It's so great. Well, and I have to say, because I do think this is also relevant, thinking about that book, that when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, something like that, I was interviewed to be a radio talk show host.
Nice.
And the guy said something I will say I was not prepared for at all. And I feel like it is like this premonition of the rest of my life and preparing me. And so he said, 50% of your listeners are going to love you. They're going to say the most amazing things about you, and you're going to feel so good. And then 50% are going to hate you, and they're going to say the most mean things ever about you. And he says, I need to know if you can come back the next day and do it all over again. And the next day, I was not prepared for that, Marcia. I was not.
What was excellent advice.
But it was such good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so somebody recently mentioned that book. I thought it's really powerful. And that's to me, like when I think about why I'm in business, when I peel back all of the layers of the onion, really, of wanting to help women be more confident, wanting them to be not paralyzed by self-doubt anymore.
Yep.
It's really about freedom, like women being free to be themselves. And so I do think that we have to get to a point where we can't care so much about what everybody thinks and try to stop looking for approval everywhere.
Yeah, but it's hard for a female because we were brought up that way. We were brought up to take care of others and think of others and everything else, and that's how our brains are. Now, I think it'll change. More women are graduating high school. More women are graduating college. There'll be more women in the workforce by far. It's already there, but we're not there quite yet. And because our pay is definitely not the same out there. And I do think even getting at the table, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a meeting with all men and I'm the one who has to put my hand out there to introduce myself. There's not like, hey, come on over. You're here by yourself.
Yeah.
No. And so it is interesting. I think that'll eventually will change. But I think it's been hard because, I think it pushed back with COVID a little bit about, making sure that education system was there and, the kids are taken care of with daycare and all. And that's a whole debacle right now. But it is hard. It is really difficult. And I think for women, it's much harder because we have to constantly feel like we're the caregiver and we're daughter and we're wife and, mom. And, my guy friends don't feel that way. They're like, well, dinner's on the table already. I'm like, yeah, that's me. Okay. And, mine will make it if I ask. But he's just not, he's not the cook. So it's pretty interesting. But if you do anything out there, ladies, okay, if you have sons, make sure they learn how to cook. Okay. So do them a huge favor. I had 3 rules from my son when he was growing up. 1 was basically play, please, and thank you on everything. 2 was make sure you make your bed and clean your bathroom all the time. Clean, clean, clean. Number 3 was you better learn how to cook. And so he was like 4 years old. I was giving him a knife. And I'm like, cut the onion. Learn how to pick out a pineapple, and it's so fun. He knows how to cook now. So I'm like, great. I did my
I
job.
love it.
Isn't
I
that
love
funny?
it.
Yeah, so they
That's
have to learn that stuff.
fantastic.
Too funny.
Well, it's so important. I mean, because only 7% of women negotiate their first job starting salary compared to 57% of men. And I thought this was getting better. And I have 2 nieces that I helped in the last few years get better salaries. And one of them, aerospace engineer, she mentioned, people around her circle of friends, nobody negotiated for
Wow.
women.
Wow. Oh,
And I
wow.
thought, wow, we have got to be having these conversations.
Totally. It's
Yeah.
so crazy. Well, on that note, how do people get a hold of you so they can have their daughter call you when they're having the negotiations to make sure this happens?
KarenLaos.com. Yes, definitely. And it's KarenLaos.com.
Oh my gosh. Thank God you're doing what you're doing. And thank you for taking time to be on the show today. I thought you actually get a lot of really good value in regards to just the small things that we don't even really take for granted until someone says a stat like that. Then that's a biggie out there. Any other stats you want to share while we have you?
Oh my gosh. That's the biggest one that comes to mind, frankly. But I would say when I think about just in general advice for women is that, well, we all know we're balancing the challenge of warmth and competence, where we've got to be likable, but we've also got to be assertive. And remembering that when we speak with conviction rather than speaking with a question mark or a comma, it makes all the difference, because that's a huge thing that I work with women on, is their voices. So they're speaking with conviction, like they mean it, and record yourself so that you can hear how you sound in a real meeting as well.
Smart move. A smart move. When I had moved into a different role after public accounting, I was always told how fast I spoke. And I literally, back then they didn't have, the stuff we have today. We had like tape recorders, people. And I literally would leave messages for people. And then it would take a lot longer, replay that message back to me. Because then if I could understand it, they couldn't understand it. And I was so trying to get so much done in so little time that I was rushing everything I did. And then when I started listening back, I'm like, I don't even understand myself. And so that was a huge wake-up lessons for myself. But, I did go through speech lessons and all to make sure I did speak slower and more clear. But, it's a gulp, because you're like, I don't need that. But then you do. You're never too old to get coaching and counseling from people. Never. And people like Karen are out there to do that. So, Karen, thank you for your time today. I appreciate that very much. Keep on going. Keep on pushing out there. We're here to help you whatever you need. Thanks for being part of Shadow Her today. Out there, people, keep on plugging. Believe in you, because we do. But here at Shadow Her, I'm Marsha O'Connor. Until next time, keep on grooving, people. Take care.